So now that we've dealt with the server-side component of SignalR, what we're going to do now is head over to our client and configure it there. So inside our client tab, in fact, what we need first of all is we need to get the package from Microsoft for SignalR that we use on the client side here. So what I'm going to do is just open up a new session, and I'm going to cd into the client app. And what we want to do here is say npm install at Microsoft /SignalR and press return. And this goes ahead and installs the latest version at the time of recording of SignalR 3.0.0. This was actually previously, before .NET Core 3.0, this was part of the ASP.NET library rather than Microsoft, but it's moved and it's been updated to match the version of the framework, so 3.0.0 in this particular case. So now that we have this installed, we need to configure our hub connection on our client side. And to do this, we'll head over to our activity store, which is where we're going to make this connection, because when a user browses to an activity, this is when we're going to want to make that connection to our chat hub. So what we'll do is inside our activity store, we'll create a new observable. So I'm just going to scroll all the way up. And what we're going to do is say observable. And because we're going to make an observable to our hub connection class, we don't actually want the whole class to be observed. We just want to add a reference to this. So our observable isn't going to go deep into our hub connection object and try and observe every property. It's only going to observe a reference to it. And we'll call this hub connection. And this is going to be of type hub connection, which we get from our SignalR package. Let's see if we can bring this in, and nope, of course not. So let's go and add this manually at the top of the file. And what we want to do here is say import and hub connection from, and we'll say at Microsoft SignalR. And we'll scroll back down, and we'll give it an alternative of null, because we're not always going to have this hub connection available. It's only when the activity details page is loaded, we're going to initiate a hub connection. So what I'll do is just below this, so that we can easily see this, I'm just going to create a new action. And I'm going to call it create hub connection. And inside here, we'll say list.hubConnection equals a new hub connection builder, which we get from SignalR. And then we specify the URL that we're using in this case. And I'm just going to hard code this in for now. And it's going to be localhost, HTTP localhost 5000 and chat. And this is what we use to initialize our connection with our chat hub. And inside here, we'll pass it some options. And the option we need is the access token factory. And what this is a string containing the access token, or a promise that resolves to a string containing the access token. And we're going to set this to our token that we've got inside our common store. And this is what we're going to pass to our hub context. And we use this because in our normal API endpoints, we send a par token inside an HTTP header. And because we're now using a different protocol, we are not able to send a par tokens in an HTTP header. And what this is going to do is send a par token as a query string instead. And that's why in our startup class, we're getting our token from the context and request query for the access token. And this is the name of the query string that it's going to be sending up, or the key in this case. And if I go back to the activity store, then what we need to do is set this to be this.rootstore.commonstore.token. And this could possibly be null, so we'll add the exclamation mark as well. And then what we need to do is, or what we can do is, we can configure login. And what we'll do is configure logging and set the log level. And we'll set it to information. So we get the maximum amount of information coming back from SignalR, just to make sure things are working okay. And then we'll use the .build to build our connection. Then what we need to do is start our hub connection. So below this one, but still inside our create hub connection action, we'll say list.hubconnection.start, and then we'll use the len, and in here all we'll do is we'll just add a console.log, and we'll pass in this.hubconnection.state, and because this is possibly null, we'll add the exclamation mark as well, but we'll pass in the state of our hub connection. And we'll also catch the error, and if there's an error, then we'll add a console.log, and we'll just say error establishing connection, and what we'll do is we'll pass in the error here. And I'll just reformat this. And what we also want to do inside the context of this hub connection is tell it what to do when we receive a comment. So what we'll do is we'll say list.hubconnection.on, and this registers a handler that will be invoked when the hub method with the specified method name is invoked. Now what we want to do in here is get the receive comments. So what we'll do is we'll say on receive comment, and spelling is important here because this is going to rely on our chat hub, and specifically this receive comment is what we're going to be invoking at this point in our hub connection. And what we want to do is say the comments that we get back, we'll say list.activity, and our activity could be null, so we'll add the exclamation mark. And our activity won't be null, I should say, when we're connected to our activity details page, because we will have an activity inside there. It's just TypeScript isn't aware of that. And then we'll say activity.comments, which we don't actually have inside our activity interface. So what we'll do is we'll just open up activity.ts, and inside our iActivity interface we'll add another property for comments, and this is going to be of type iCommentArray, and this means we also need another interface, so I'll just say export interface iComment, and we'll set the ID to type of string created at will be a date, the body will be a string, the username will be a string, the display name will be a string, and the image will also be a string. Basically exactly the same information that we're sending down in our comment DTO. And our activity is also going to have this array of comments as well. So back in the activity store we can say activity.comments.push, and then we can push the comment inside there. So this is how we can create our hub connection, and what we'll also add just for this particular lesson is we'll add the action to stop the hub connection as well, because when we leave the activity details page we're going to want to turn off this connection. So in this particular function all we'll do is we'll say this.hubconnection.stop, and we need the exclamation mark again, and this will allow us to turn off our hub connection. So what we'll do next is we'll add the functionality to connect this up to our activity details page, and we'll start to look at that next.